Making a video. So, nihilist video. A nihilist, I think I would call myself. Because they're worse than theists, are these value nihilists. So I've complained before that there's no point in having a conversation with a nihilist because they'll violate any premise by just eventually saying God did it. Nihilism just evacuates all subjects, all facts are evadable. Once you're losing an argument, you just pulled out the nihilist card. Well, prove the difference between, feelings and not feeling. A glass of water and a feeling thing. Somehow they don't understand the difference. They don't understand the value existing. It doesn't matter whether it feels good or feels bad. All logic disappears, and there's no more. You can't argue anything, right? So every political issue, every subject is evadable. If you're losing the argument and you're a nihilist, you always have a wild card. You just pull out your nihilist wild card and say it doesn't matter. Outcomes are irrelevant. Yeah, well, so there's no conversation. There's no point in wasting time investing in a conversation with a nihilist. It's just a waste of time. So anyway, I went to Pierrot's room, and that's all they are. They're all convenientists who, frankly, think they have some right to declare other people's suffering irrelevant. I don't have to acknowledge it. If I feel like it, I'll acknowledge it. But I have no logical obligation to recognize somebody else's pain as a problem in need of solution. No rational obligation to consider all the pawns on the chessboard equal. Somehow, the one that I'm sitting on is more important. Not rationally, not logically, just is, because they say so. So let's go through this again. And the Carnival, I thought we sort of made progress. And this, well, I don't know if progress would be the wrong word. At least I established why I can't possibly see the world the way he sees it, because I understand evolution, and I understand that we are toolkits. Evolution builds them through this slow, laborious process over billions of years. It took billions of years just to get to the first neuron. More than 3 billion years to get there. They're just tools that make organisms more capable or competent to fight in this war for survival. In an arena where you could be born with 10,000 brothers and sisters, and only one of you is going to get to maturation. You're just going to live to maybe see your first birthday. It's a really tough fight, all right, for the replication of the molecule you carry. And that's what's happening. And the fact that that molecule is evolving needs to be understood. That we're just the fodder for the evolution of a molecule. And we're just equipped with faculties, functional bits, to fight for that molecule's replication. And one of the bits was neurology, and most specifically feelings, because feelings created the opportunity for learning. It was sort of a necessary step that regardless of how nature created the first feeling organism, the first thing that could say ouch, where ouch it could actually do something about ouch. There's a whole, it's complex to get from the non-feeling organism to the first ouch as it was complex to get from chemistry in a sea to a replicating DNA molecule inside a membrane. It's probably just as expansive a bit of complexity to overcome, of nuanced circumstance, of perfect storm relationships of contact and interaction. But anyway, regardless of how it happened, it's a fact that we got it from evolution. We got it through the process of evolution, and then like all other tools, it exists in these sentient learning animals because it gives them greater capacity to manipulate the environment because they can learn through personal experience. They don't have to be pre-programmed to suit the world. They can suit an environment on the fly, on the run. They can leave and adapt to a different environment. They can learn a new way to live. And they can learn because they have a valuing mechanism. And the valuing mechanism is really just a mechanism that's taking advantage of the fact that motivation can be created, synthesized, in this thing called a brain. A brain can apparently, quite obviously, we're doing it, it can create this model of the world and put in the model feelings to create value references. Now the value references would only have purpose as creating some sort of recognition of the difference between one thing and another thing based on nothing else but value. The difference between a dead thing and a living thing, for example, or something. You can recognize the difference, value one more than you could value the other one. Ripe fruit versus not ripe fruit, that kind of thing. And the idea of creating it creates this mechanism that now can just become pure motivation. You can be compelled, based on the fact that you are put in a different value state in terms of your condition of discomfort, to acquire comfort. So I would call it the will to comfort. That the organism is built now, the sentient one, to maximize comfort, to be obedient to some extent to these compulsions of necessity: food, shelter, sex, and the acquisition of ego status, hierarchy. And these are the basic, that's all there is. It's not complex in the pieces of our psychology. It's only complex in the way it nuances in terms of each individual's experience in life and how they come out of the process, with what kind of understanding they have of the context of their emotional responses. And you can certainly understand some of your emotional responses are inappropriate and some of them aren't. And you can understand that. Some reactions are entirely silly. You care whether the Mets win the World Series. Silly thing to care about. Or you care about whether somebody's going to be killed in a tsunami. These are, one thing has some character to the concern. It's some correlation between some kind of real sense of value, a real accurate description of a real value circumstance, and the other one is just a contrived addiction where you say, I personally have a compulsion, to see my team win. And you can describe these as being silly, trivial, versus coherent to a real problem in the real world. So again, our feelings are created to essentially create the value that doesn't exist on the things. There's no way to distinguish valuable things from non-valuable things in reality. They don't have a label on them. They're not marked. And our brain is the only thing that can mark them. And it's marking them with real value. I've said this in videos. And I just don't think it's rationally disputed. And I don't get a counter-argument that's made out of a rational counter-argument. They just start talking religion or woo or crap or quantum nonsense, and not deal with the real fact that sentient creatures have experiences, and it's the experiences that have value. The sensations felt define the character of the experience. Torture is real. It happens in brains. It's made of feelings and sensations, and it's bad, and it can be established as a fact. And for these nihilists to say, I will negate it and call it merely a configuration that motivates behavior, that creates behavior, it doesn't motivate it, somehow just creates it, as a programmed response. Well, it's obviously not just a programmed response. It's a programmed response that has this value written all over it. It has these feelings on it. The feelings happen. They happen in the universe. And to negate that is a significant fact of our existence. Like the number one significant fact of existence is the creation, the existence of the sentient brain capable of feeling. There can't be any other fact. Can you give me a fact that's more significant than the creation through evolution of a sentient brain capable of manifesting feelings that are value flavored, comfort, discomfort? I don't think this is a rational argument. And clearly the argument, I've made this one over and over again, that there's no practical difference between this machine and any real important difference. There's no important difference between this machine's welfare, how good I feel, and how good any other human sentient feels. The value of them being comfortable is equally valuable. I can't, through any Mr. Spock good logic, come up with any reason to think my comfort is more important or more valuable or a better thing to have in the universe than any other sentient creature's comfort. Torture is bad no matter who's experiencing it. It doesn't matter whether it's me or a guy named Jim or Joe or Sally or Sue. It doesn't matter. And for these people to argue that I will make it not matter by simply saying it's only happening to them, it's not in the universe, it's not on the chessboard anymore, I'll just take all the pawns off the chessboard and now I can pretend my pawn's important and those pawns aren't. No, the pawns are on the chessboard, they're in the universe, and what happens to every one of them is important, and it's fundamentally equally important. Should I have to say more? See, it's another argument too where they just keep bringing up this thing like somehow I have to put into words the concept of consciousness. Like I have to explain it. And you can't explain it because it's unique. You can't compare it to anything else in the universe. There's nothing like consciousness. There's nothing kind of like consciousness. There's nothing sort of like consciousness. There's absolutely no other known reference that you can articulate or explain that's anything like conscious feelings. You have to experience feelings to know feelings. You can't have them explained to you if you don't have any. Now certainly you can explain one feeling and compare it to another feeling, but you have to have a reference. You have to know what a feeling is. You have to know what a headache is to know what a brain tumor might be like. You have to have references. And clearly, for most of us, we have a whole pile of common references. So this shouldn't be a complex conversation. We all may be repulsed and irritated, and we might find it miserable. Very different things might make us miserable. Very different things make us feel bad. But the capacity to feel bad, our understanding of what it is to feel bad, we should be able to say, yes, we understand that syndrome, we understand that condition, I accept the existence of that condition, and whether their feelings are for good reasons or bad is irrelevant. The feeling is relevant, and the only time it's relevant why you're feeling is when you're talking about feelings in the context of philosophy or their meaning. And that's when they become important, because you can understand the difference between necessary and unnecessary. You can understand the difference between efficient and inefficient in terms of you getting gratification at somebody else's expense. You can understand most humans in America now mostly understand that slavery was wrong, because slavery created comfort in a small group of people, or even most people, at the harsh expense of other people's misery and suffering, and that wasn't a good bargain, it wasn't a fair bargain, it wasn't an efficient, decent exchange. Wasn't a fair contract, certainly. Maybe not the best example. I mean, you could go with something more overt, like you get paid $50 to dump dioxin in a drinking water reservoir. Clearly, your personal advantage is the $50, but clearly, the pain and suffering that's going to be imposed because of your action isn't worth any gratification you could buy with that $50. There's not going to be any gratification you will get for that $50 that will in any way be in any way compensation for the harsh pain and suffering that will be endured by those other sentient beings. And it always has to be a calculation in that context, that you cannot just you can't me and them the idea of consciousness. The idea of it is spread. You can't avoid it. Your consciousness is not special. Your consciousness is not better. Your consciousness is not more entitled to respect and protection from harm. And the value is in the feelings experienced. If there was no capacity to be tortured, none of this conversation could have any meaning. There's nothing at stake. It is the fact that torture can happen that the conversation is vitally important, because the conversation can be reduced the amount of torture, which is the same as reducing the amount of bad. Bad is a real thing. It's not an imaginary thing. It really happens in the real universe, in sentient brains. So anyway, but like I said, there's no point in having a conversation about anything meaningful with people who can annihilate that fundamental structure, who can say it doesn't exist. We all just get to make it up. There's no truth regarding the value integrity of sentient experience. They claim there's no absolute truth regarding the value integrity of sentient experience. They truly believe it may be possible that torture is as good as feeding everyone cupcakes. They think that's a possible theoretical truth, if they don't overtly think it doesn't make any difference. I'm saying that's insane, and somebody should be against it. And I'm against it. So, I don't know how to solve this problem, but I mean, it's almost like there has to be before I will waste time working for an hour to have a conversation about the significance of conscious experience and the value it creates, there's absolutely no point in me investing an hour in that conversation if in the end, when it's looking like you're going to lose the argument, you just pull out the nihilist card and say, prove torture is bad. I can only prove it to something sentient. I can only prove it to something that has experienced horrible sensations and knows they're bad, they're negative, they're unproductive, they're inefficient, they're a cause for concern. If you won't concede that, we have nothing to talk about. No conversation can ever go anywhere, because you will just annihilate it with your value nihilism. Reason goes out the window because you break the most important premise. Consciousness is a significant difference. Consciousness, anything that possesses consciousness has possession of a property that makes it substantially different than all the other non-conscious matter. Conscious matter is different, and different in a significant and important way. The only way that can make any significant difference. It's the only thing that could possibly matter. Nothing else. If an action does not affect a sentient being, it can't be meaningful. By definition, it's not possible. It has to affect the welfare of a sentient, or it's meaningless. No, I can't. Yeah, like I said, this is dumber. Like I said, this is dumber than theology. To have to argue the existence of this nihilist God, the God of, I will forget what I've learned through conscious experience. I will negate what I know through conscious experience. What conversation? I mean, it's such a desperate lie to your own experience, to the decisions you make every day to improve your condition. And it's just such an obnoxious lie to pretend you're doing something else. And to pretend that it's okay if you impose worse on somebody else. Fuck. Anyway. That's just my statement. Like I said, I just find these people, I can't say imbecile louder. They've missed the most important fact there is. There's no more important fact than being able to tell the difference between a bottle of vitamins and a sentient brain. If you can't see the substantial, monstrous, huge, gigantic difference between a piece of paper and a sentient brain, you are so colossally stupid and ignorant and dumb and fucktarded. You can't get more dysfunctional. You might as well be an unplugged toaster. You might as well be a car with no engine. I mean, there's just no point having a thinking device that doesn't know the most important fact in the universe. Sentience matters. Fuck. Like I said, it's not, they can't possibly not know it. I mean, you can't. I mean, frankly, I just can't see how I could be conscious. I can have these sensations, and I'm going to pretend it doesn't matter. That there's no real difference between horrible, torturous pain and suffering and wonderful, pleasant comfort. Bottom line, these are just wimpy trolls who can't argue worth shit. That's what it comes down to. They just have no argument balls. And so they're just resorting like a theist. God did it. God did it. You come up with something physically impossible. God can make a whale that can swallow people. God can do whatever God wants. So there. Game over. God has magic powers. God doesn't care about what happens if you stop the earth from going around the sun or you do this. God doesn't care. He can make it all just stick because he can just put crazy glue under our feet. God doesn't, you know. So it can be as illogical as it doesn't matter because logic doesn't count anymore because we're just going to negate it. And you might as well just negate all rational conversation about value if you're going to turn it into just make up any subjective nonsense and call it the truth. Fuck. Too stupid. Alright, that's probably enough. I mean, you know, it has to be enough unless you want to get into a whole bunch of Freudian psychology, and then you'll understand that you're just psychology. You're just having these emotional reactions to your own self-preservation, your own self-glorification, and you're just fucking, you're the opposite of anthropomorphizing. Instead of humanizing the other humans, you've, you know, dehumanized them to make yourself capable of functioning without fear or worry. And that's it. You're just negating the reality so you can create a justification for your gluttony. Period. End of sentence. End of paragraph. End of essay. Thank you very much. Till next time.